Wake that ass up early in the morning. The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We had a special guest on the line, Dr. Jess.
Yes, indeed. Good morning, Dr. Jess.
Good morning.
Congratulations.
Working from home, yes.
Congratulations on the new baby, you-in-law.
Thank you. He's the
And happy
sweetest
Mother's
thing.
Day. It was your first Mother's Day, so I know that was amazing.
It was. We were inside, but it was nice.
It's a lot of inside, huh? A lot of inside, huh?
A lot of inside, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How have you been maintaining your mental health, with a new baby and this pandemic? Like, what have you been doing to stay relatively sane?
Oh, yeah. Well, the biggest thing I do is I stay connected with my loved ones. I think one of the things that really is dangerous for people is loneliness. And so even if you're surrounded by people, I know some people are staying at home, with a lot of people, their extended family. But if you feel lonely, that can lead to a lot of problems with not only your physical health, but your mental health. So I've been staying connected. I do a lot of video calls with like my family, show the baby off. And we take a few walks. We wear the mask. We cover the baby up in that little, rain covering for the stroller. So we try to get some sunlight too.
Mm-hmm. It is also, since you guys just had a baby, it is actually probably kind of nice to not have as many things to do as you would, like if everything was up and running, to actually have this time to spend at home too.
That's true. I would definitely be missing out on a lot of things with spring happening. If we weren't in this pandemic, I know I would definitely feel jealous of my friends getting to travel, but everybody's at home. So you're right. Yeah.
Y'all relationship with y'all child gonna be crazy though, because like y'all gonna be so close because both of y'all are together with the baby all the time in the first few months. That's actually gonna be a blessing.
I received that. Thank you. My worry is if we don't get out of this soon, he's going to be a little weird kid, not able to deal with anybody but us.
Well, he's still a baby. Now, what was it like giving birth during this time too? Because I know some people were scared about it. I've read a lot of articles about women who, 9 months pregnant and they're a little concerned. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah. So, I worked at a hospital that was, all through the media because it had a lot of the COVID-19 cases. And so my midwife actually had me stay home for a couple of weeks even before the baby came. So I was at home. And me and my husband-in-law, we actually had decided to do a home birth way before this pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah. So a part of it was just because we know the rates of, the Black maternal death rates are very high in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
A lot higher than across the country. And I knew from my experience in medicine that I did not want to be silenced in the hospital. I was worried about, just not really having my experience go the way I wanted it to. So we went that route, and it ended up being a very peaceful experience. I had a midwife, my doula was there, law was amazing. And we just literally, as soon as the baby was born, a few hours, they check you, do all of these other things. They leave, and it was kind of neat. They just turn the light off and let themselves out of your house.
And everybody just goes home and
yeah.
You're there. Wow. So there's no visiting hours. There's no, you can't watch the baby now. It's just strictly, wow, that's amazing.
It was pretty amazing. It was. So I definitely encourage people, home birth maybe isn't for everyone, but during this time, it's going to be really important for people to find some sort of support that's going to help them. Even if if you're in the hospital, and some hospitals aren't letting parents stay long, you
Right.
just want to kind of prepare yourself mentally for what that will look like. But all births are good births for sure.
That's crazy because I think of all the layers, right? Like you got the Black maternal death rate, and then you have coronavirus impacting the Black and brown community the way that it is. How do we even survive in this country? How?
I know. So the one thing I've been really hoping that people recognize is as the country starts to open up, right? 47 states are opening up in some way. Black and brown people do not need to fall for this, because we know that we are more likely to, when we get this virus, to be really sick, end up in the hospital, and we're more likely to die from this virus when we are in the hospital, right? So the best thing that people need to do right now with the information we have is you need to really continue social distancing. You cannot be out there, at your barbershop getting your nails done. You really need to try your best to stay at home. The other piece is a lot of Black and brown people, we actually are more likely to be the frontline workers. We're more likely to work in these essential jobs where we are more at risk of getting the virus. So if you're in that category, definitely mask up, definitely, really push for people to keep their distance from you, advocate for that. But if you're lucky enough to work from home, stay at home. Do not fall for this going out and shopping, because you probably will get exposed to the virus. And if you have an underlying condition like diabetes, high blood pressure, you probably will get sick. And that's the issue. We don't really know who gets the sickest, and we don't really have good treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was going to ask, well, congratulations again, and you have a new baby. But for some parents out there that have kids that are a little older, what would you advise to them for their mental health? I mean, because it has to be difficult to seeing their friends, to not being able to see their friends. And then you don't want them online all day long. You don't want them watching TV all day long. And you're, concerned constantly about how are they thinking mentally,
Right. So first things that's going to be important for everyone is to maintain a routine as much as possible, right? I think we all can fall into the slump of just staying in your pajamas all day, sleeping until whenever, staying up until whenever, letting the TV put you to sleep. Really try to avoid that. And then I think for parents, it's going to be important to try to create an environment where they can talk about how they feel. I know I'm always saying that, talk about how you feel, but that's going to be so important. Family time is going to be important. It's a big opportunity for people to do that. If you're having dinner, have dinner all together. Don't do that stuff in front of the TV. Sit down, at a table. If you have one that you can all gather around, do that, and just invite your children to talk about how they're doing. And don't tell them that what they're feeling isn't normal. Don't tell them, oh, they should get over that. Really encourage them to talk about how they feel and just normalize it. Because let's be honest, we don't really know how long this is going to last. Right. And I think if you're honest about that with your children and just keep creating that space, they can at least feel safe in knowing that you hear them and that you're taking care of them.
Dr. Jess, what advice do you have for people who are experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety for financial purposes? People have been furloughed, they've been laid off from work, they don't know how they're going to pay their bills, they've been just deferring payments, and then at some point they are going to have to make those payments, but maybe they don't know what type of job they'll have. What would you say as far as that?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the really tough reality. From large scale disasters, we know that there typically is an increase in the number of cases of anxiety, depression, PTSD, for example, with 9/11. So the reality is a lot of people are going to probably come out of this with some signs or symptoms of anxiety and maybe even anxiety disorder. So it's very likely that that's what the person is going to experience. So my advice is to try to do your best to cope with it. The sad reality is a lot of Americans are unemployed right now. We're seeing the highest rates that we've seen in decades. And the reality is a lot of people will not be able to make payments. So try to work with your support system to come up with a way to figure out which bills are going to be most important. A lot of companies are giving 90 days between bills, so try to figure out who's doing that. Really try to push through what you're feeling in terms of figuring out a plan. And then coping with anxiety is going to be simple things like trying to make sure that you're getting some exercise in the space that you're in your home. Exercise, yoga, doing some deep breathing, talking about what you're feeling. Don't hold it in. But this is a really tough time, and I expect people to really have a hard time.
So you expect to see a rise in like just mental illness period after the coronavirus, or during the coronavirus and after?
Absolutely. So experts are saying that after or even just during this, or once we get through COVID-19, that we probably will see increases in anxiety, depression, loneliness, because people are, isolating alone. And even, some people we may see an increase in things like domestic violence, child abuse, because children are home instead of at school, and substance use too. People are using substances to cope. Alcohol, marijuana, they're using that a lot to try to get through this time, but that can also lead to problems down the road. and even something called death by despair. You know, suicide rates are going up in terms of like, we're seeing physicians do that more now because of all the stress that they're under, and even longer term risk. If somebody's drinking alcohol every single day to try to get through, liver damage down the road can actually be contributing to this death by despair that we're also seeing.
What advice do you have for people who aren't able to properly grieve right now? Also, as you can see with funerals, there's a lot of limitations with that. We're seeing deaths where you can't even go to the hospital and visit somebody before they pass. So what kind of advice would you give for people that are having problems with this whole grieving process and not really being able to experience that right now when they need to?
Yeah, that is another really difficult experience for people to have. What I recommend is really, again, leaning on your support system, your loved ones, your family, your friends, using things like Zoom. Obviously you can't hold a service over that, but what you can do is use that community environment that you can create through a Zoom call or a Duo or FaceTime, whatever you have, to really just kind of honor that person's memory. You know, I know someone personally who, you know, their loved one passed away and they still haven't even been able to start the burial or cremation process. So it's very, very devastating now. And I would just encourage people to really try to lean into their supports and be creative, you know, call people up, talk about that loved one, schedule the time to do that. But again, this is unprecedented.
You know, when you talk about
people get help for people out there, you know, I'm sorry, I cut you off. How can people get help? You know, when people are in this situation, what help, how can they get help? Because, you know, usually it's easy. You can go to your therapist, you can go to your pastor, you can, different places you can go. But now I'm stuck at the home and I might be dealing with anxiety, I might be dealing with depression. How do you advise people to get those type of help? Where can they go? Who can they see? Who can they call? Who can they Zoom, you know?
Absolutely. So, you know, if you already are connected with a mental health professional, your therapist, your psychiatrist, now's not the time to quit. You know, you definitely want to make sure that you are maintaining your visits. A lot of providers are doing virtual visits. So, you know, I'm also doing that as well, where you can talk to your provider directly, you know, through a screen. So keep doing that if you're doing that. If you're looking for help, there are a lot of crisis lines available now that can help people kind of through the immediate. So, you know, whatever town or city you're in, Google search it, look it up on your smartphone, you know, what crisis lines are available in your town. And then also, you know, like, for example, in New York City, NYC Well is a wonderful resource that people can use to get connected to therapists, psychiatrists directly. But I would just encourage people to start there, look it up online. Again, this is a time to really be proactive. And there are a lot of resources available because so many people are suffering.
Doc, when we talk about anxiety, right? Like, you know, usually when I'm talking to my therapist about anxiety, it's like an irrational fear. Like, anxiety is usually irrational fears, but this is a very rational thing to be afraid of, this whole pandemic we're in. So what would you tell your patient if they told you that they were experiencing anxiety about this situation?
I would say I'm glad that you're in touch with your emotion, because this is something that most people are experiencing. You know, I had someone ask me, they were they husband and wife, they both drive buses for a city, and they were experiencing anxiety. And they asked me, how do I cope with this? And the reality is that anxiety can be useful, because if you're a frontline worker and you're looking at coworkers getting really sick, some of them dying, you are feeling what you are describing, Charlamagne, as rational fear. And so use that. Is it time for you know, I told this couple, is it time for one of you to consider maybe not working if your resources can allow that? Is it time to really kind of advocate for that? Because if both of you end up sick, where does that put you? So that anxiety can be useful because it can tell you something is going on and I need to figure out how to get through this, whether it's unemployment, figuring out how you're going to pay your bills, figuring out what you're going to tell your children, or figuring out if you still need to go to work. Because Black and brown people, we are being forced to kind of be at the front line of this entire pandemic. So to your point, Charlamagne, I would tell my patient, what are you feeling anxious about? Let's figure out if there's a way that you can actually work through this so that you can figure out a plan. And then let's try to figure out how to cope. But first things first, let's figure out what is the real issue here, or issues.
And you know, you spoke about people, you know, staying home, right? Do you think people's mental exhaustion from being stuck at home is forcing them to believe it's actually safe to resume everyday life?
Absolutely. So denial is a defense mechanism that we have a number of different defense mechanisms that our psyche uses to help to kind of protect it, right? You can use denial. You can say, oh, this isn't really happening. You can project. You can say, I'm not mad. My husband is the one that's mad, but really you're the one that's feeling that emotion. So I do think because a lot of people, you know, we've been home for almost 2 months for a lot of people, you know, and then the media shifting the story to, look, this town is open. You got people protesting, literally doing workouts outside of a, you know, state capitol building saying, we want to work out in the gym together. So I do think that it can cause people to think that this is now sort of over. But if they paid attention to what happened in the Senate yesterday, a lot of experts are pointing out that while these places, towns are opening, that we are still seeing a rise in the number of cases. And even though the media is not focusing on what's happening with Black and brown people, we are still the ones who are being affected by this. So if you want to, you know, take your chances and go out there, I'm not encouraging that, but it could be a part of that is denial, that you're no longer really believing that this is happening, because we're tired of it. Everyone's tired of being inside.
Right. You know, a lot of people, they haven't, they maybe not haven't developed mental illness, but how can they just combat general thoughts of negativity? Like when you got those feelings of negativity at a time like this, how do you just combat those just regular everyday feelings of negativity?
Absolutely. So I encourage people to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is really just taking a small moment of time and focusing as many of your senses on whatever you're doing. So an example I always give people, it can be like picking up a piece of fruit, an orange, really taking in that. It sounds really corny, but what that does over time is it helps people to learn how to cope with acceptance. Being able to accept that this is a situation that I'm not in control of. And if you're able to sort of develop that type of coping, then it does lead to less anxiety, right? Whereas a lot of people cope by trying to figure out everything. You know, if I can figure out I'm going to meet all of my, you know, bills, or if I can figure out how I'm going to get my children to do all of these things, that makes them feel relief. But we're in a time where that's not realistic. So mindfulness is going to help you to learn how to accept, just be in the moment. It is what it is, right? So I encourage people to start that practice. You can do something like that. Pick up a piece of fruit and kind of smell it. What does it feel like? What does it taste like as you're eating it? You can do that with like a warm, you know, a hot shower. What does the steam feel like? What does the, you know, body wash smell like? All of those things. Invite your senses to really come into play. The other thing is really to reframe the way that you are talking to yourself or talking out loud. So instead of saying that I'm stuck at home, you know, you're safe at home. Instead of saying, well, you know, oh my God, I'm spending too much time with my family. Like you all encourage me, look how much time I get to spend with my family. And that's going to help your mind to not really get into that negative cycle. And it's not easy to do, but you can find if you can start to do that really over time, you might really be able to shake a lot of those negative thoughts. It's really about reframing the way that you're thinking and talking.
What about the people who've been expressing disappointment in themselves because they feel like they haven't been productive during this whole stay-at-home quarantine thing? What's your thoughts on that?
You know, look, this is a pandemic. You know, we are really at a point where this can take months. I mean, it may even take years to get out of this if we look at some of the pandemics, you know, throughout history and how they kind of kept cropping up and going down. And our old standards are no longer what we need to be using. So it's absolutely okay if you don't come out of this pandemic with the New York Times bestseller. It's okay if you do not come out of this pandemic with everything done. You really just need to focus on living and maintaining, because this is a very, again, unprecedented time, and it's very hard for a lot of people.
Right.
Word.
It's a good time to forgive yourself for things and not feel guilty about, I'm watching TV. I look at it like I never get to watch TV like this. So I'm going to watch this and enjoy it. And one thing I did say, because I started off with this, like working out every day and being really healthy. And then I spent a little bit of time like not doing so well. And then I had to get myself back on track a couple of days ago. Like, what am I doing? But I looked at it like, this has never happened for me before. Like, this is unprecedented. I don't know if it will ever happen again. So I am trying to take advantage of some things in my home that I need to handle and that I haven't had a chance to do. So I look at it like that.
Absolutely. And that's what I think a lot of people should do. Just, you know, practice self-compassion. Some days you're going to get it right. Some days you won't, you know, but it is what it is. We have to just do what we can to keep our minds in a place where we're not feeling depressed, we're not feeling really low about things, because it's a long haul.
Absolutely.
And listen, this is my
All right.
last question. Can we talk about the pressure that you and Law put on y'all young king by naming him Brilliant?
I figured this was going to come up. You know, I don't think it's pressure. What I think this is really going to help him to hear every time his name is called what my hope is for every Black and brown kid out there, is to know that they are brilliant, to know that they are destined for something bigger, for whatever it is that they, you know, decide to do in life. And then, to be honest, it really is a challenge, because you cannot yell at a kid named Brilliant. I can't be telling my child to sit their butt down. I really got to think about it. So, you know, it's something that we thought about, and
Right.
we're really happy with.
That's
That's like
actually a
Sir
dope
from
name,
TDE.
though.
When you have to call him Sir from TDE. That's his name, Sir.
Yeah,
That's Hove's son's name too.
Yes, sir.
Jess,
Brill.
what's his nickname
Brill for
gonna?
short.
What's his nickname gonna be?
Brill.
I don't know yet. Yeah, I think that's, you know, his auntie has come up with a few nicknames. So, but I'm going to stick with calling him his full name.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right.
That's hard.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jess, for checking in. We appreciate you.
Give me your Twitters and Instagrams and all that good stuff, Dr. Jeff.
Oh, yeah. So it's Ask Dr. Jess on Instagram. That's really where I spend a lot of my time. You know, I always want to connect with therapists, so you can visit my website, askdrjess.com. Make sure that you let me know where you practice, what kind of work you do, because I think we should really connect during this time. And then I'm also taking patients. So, you know, you can also go to askdrjess.com and fill out some information there.
And don't you have a project coming out? A book or something? An audible?
I do.
Okay.
It's coming out. It's not finished yet, but it will be finished soon. So yeah, I'll have a book out, hopefully the end of this year. Yeah, that's going to help people to kind of know the beginning steps to seeking help, you know, in my voice and my tone.
Dope.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Jess. We appreciate
Thank you,
for
Dr.
checking in one more
Jess.
time.
Appreciate
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
It's the
Bye.
Breakfast Club. It's Dr. Jess.